Studio mics are up. And good morning to you once more, Lagos. You're tuned in and listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1 with Valentine.
And Folu.
And it is 7:30 today, Friday, the 18th of May. Right now, it's time to go into national newspaper and at Sisioge, Lagos. Good morning, Mr. Ireti.
AKA Mega Marco's auntie.
Let's keep it local. Let's focus on Nigeria. We also have Tunde Okufi in the studio. He's big cuffs up on social media. Good morning. Fantastic. No royal things for you there.
Nah, man.
Excellent. And we've got Nwaji, the corporate MC with a K on Twitter. He's in the studio as well. Good morning. Excellent. Great to have you all in the studio. Very exciting, and great to have you, Lagos. And we know you're in the studio with us because sometimes we see your live chat up on our YouTube stream. So if you go to YouTube right now, you'll be able to see us in the studio and actually watch what's going on. You can also send in messages to us. We appreciate your messages and your comments on the newspaper stories. It helps to enlighten us and everyone else who's listening. So keep them coming in. Send them in to us on WhatsApp 0809 444 0981, or you can just tweet at us and use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Now we'll go into the first set of stories for this morning. Our first story, Mr. Ireti, will take us over to you for analysis. The new Telegraph says strike. The court orders health workers to resume within 24 hours. That's the National Industrial Court in Abuja. They said, listen, go back to the negotiating table, have a discussion. And this was following an ex parte application. So that's by a non-governmental organization. An NGO took this forward. An ex parte just basically means they didn't let the other side know. And the court says, go back, negotiate, and get to work because Nigerians are the ones who are suffering.
Yes, and Johesu is saying, look, even if you want us to do this, Professor Isaac Adewale, he's the Minister of Health, they're asking Buhari to get rid of him because apparently he's either not helping or he's making matters worse. Because one of the quotes says that meeting has been deadlocked occasioned by Adewale's position for the meeting to fail ab initio. What does that mean? What does ab initio? I mean, does anybody know what language
As
that
initially,
is? Oh,
as
okay.
initially planned.
There you go. Thank you, Valentine. See, it's not just a pretty face. Yeah, so that's
This life and times this Friday, just relax your blood.
yeah, because apparently, and I don't know why, because this story doesn't tell us why, Adewale is so bad, or
yeah, they just seem to think he's some sort of impediment to their
progress. And they've met, I think, 6 times. It's interesting. 30th of April, 3rd of May, 9th of May, 15th of May, Wednesday the 16th of May, and still nothing has happened. Now, the court's telling them to get back to the negotiating table and work things out. It's all very well you can order people to do stuff, but you can't force them to drink the water that you leave there. Because again, this story doesn't tell us what the sticking point is. What is it that they haven't been agreed on? So I have no doubt, or should I say, I suspect we will be back here again, after the meeting.
Shortly.
I don't think we're shortly. That's the best word. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Ireti. Do keep sending in your messages to us again. That hashtag is freshlypressed981. We've got more up next. Tunde, let's go to you for this one. We have the NEC ordering the NNPC, the NPDC, the FIRS, Customs, and a number of other agencies to refund 8 trillion naira worth of unremitted funds to the government. I mean, I'm just going to you for this story. What's your take on the breakdown here?
I mean, well, so you see clearly a large number of government agencies not remitting as they should, and this is no surprise, and it's not news, to be honest. It's pretty much been the mainstay of governance and running the country, to be honest, for the longest time. We find government officers once they're in certain positions have lifestyles and have assets that way outstrip anything they could have earned, legally, even if they were to work 3 to 4 times, or even 10 lifetimes. They wouldn't working for that agency. They wouldn't have amassed what it is that they've amassed. So there are huge gaps in the system. This is nothing. I mean, we all know of WAEC that generates in excess of 11 to 12 billion every year, but over the years prior to 2015, remitted in the millions. 6.9 million. Claiming things such as overhead, and funds just disappearing. How does an agency move from remitting in the millions and in the lower end of the millions to be able to remit billions?
Absolutely.
So that's just
It's called magic.
magic, absolute magic. So what's happened to the handful of officials or officers who have been at the helm of affairs at those parastatals in the past years? Nothing happened. See, so that's the issue. It's good they've done this audit, right? But it will even be better if they really go after those who are culpable, because it's not just an error, it's not just a mistake, right? People have been stealing from the nation, and stealing very brazenly. If you don't do audits and you don't do checks, obviously you don't know what's being stolen. Now we've done the audits, we should go after people. And then the orientation of the civil service also needs to change. We know in other countries that turned around. I mean, we're not the only nation that has turned around corruption, right? Look at what they do to the civil servants in China as part of orientation. They take them through a course which includes going to visit prisons for them to see officials who have misstepped, so what's waiting
Important.
for you. And that, I know someone who that's played heavily on their mind, who had to audit the prisons when he was a young civil servant, and he played on his mind when he got into senior office in this country, and it prevented him from stealing because he saw people who he knew growing up who were when the country worked better, people who he knew who were influential in society. When he was not qualified and was auditing prisons, he saw them in prison, and that never allowed him to steal from the creature, even though he had access to it. There's a bunch of things that need to happen: orientation, audits, proper controls. Here they talk about governance in the parastatals, but we pay lip service to what we have today anyway, right? So we need to do a whole lot more, and it shouldn't stop at, we found out that these guys are under-remitted, let them refund. See, they're even saying refund. Do you understand? So clearly,
Examples
There's no criminal process, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for that, Tunde. We keep it rolling. LCCI are seeking a ban on wood exportation from Nigeria. This is according to the Vanguard newspaper. So the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they called for a ban on exportation on wood. They're saying the environment is suffering from serious degradation, that the level of deforestation in the country is intolerable, and that it is better for them to export furniture, not just raw wood, because value addition has a more beneficial impact on the economy than a primary product export. Over to you, Nwaji, for your take on this one.
Well, first and foremost, it's a two-part story. The first leads with the LCCI calling for a ban on wood exploitation. The second component is now saying that they should try and limit the National Assembly calling up, private individuals to the Senate, etc., etc. But going back to the wood exploitation component, I'm a little bit confused with this statement that is calling for a ban, saying that this is indeed what is causing pollution and degradation in the environment in Nigeria. Really, that's what the issue is. That's where we have our problems. We're not looking at the amount of waste and how we manage waste and the amount of plastic that we have in our waterways. That's not what you want to focus your energies on. Is with regards to deforestation, which is a problem within itself, but that should not now automatically lead to local produce of the wood that you have for production. There are ways in which you can segment components of your available arid forest land for you to get wood from without it necessarily having negative effects on your environment. So I completely disagree with this statement, and it's somewhat irresponsible because you are now promoting importation versus a proper way of managing how you
Absolutely.
now handle wood processing in the country. So this is very irresponsible on behalf of LCCI, and I completely disagree with it because you are now putting individuals who are in wood processing in Nigeria, people who have businesses and have invested a lot in peril, because with these kind of statements, people now become to say, okay, well, I don't want to come with you because you're a threat to the environment. I'd rather go and import. I mean, come on, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, Benga here has a message on WhatsApp. It says the Jesu strike is more of an ego problem with the enemy than any meaningful agitation. I really do not know why these two professional bodies in the health sector are at loggerheads with each other rather than complementing each other's efforts for the good of the public. Why are we so concerned about government revenue generated from agencies? and people are lending help with the ab initio description from the beginning. Okay, yeah. This other one here, yeah, same thing. Thank you very much, guys. Keep them coming. 0809 444 0981.
Okay, but did you want to comment, Waji, very quickly on the second part as well with the National Assembly and calling up private individuals? Because we've seen this before. People are quite worried as to the effects that it has on a lot of these corporations when you keep calling their CEOs.
Well, the main issue is cost and time, because you go to Abuja, you spend 2-3 days, and then get nothing accomplished. You know, their flight costs, and as we know, flight costs have gone up exponentially, and then their hotel costs running around, and all sorts of other sundries.
But there's a
that you have to-
reputational cost as well, especially if it makes it into the pages of the newspaper.
Well, that can be managed because you could just be going there for one litigation or legislation issue or whatever the case may be. So I don't necessarily see that as a negative impact as much as just the waste of time of just getting me up here to do these kind of things. I understand your point about the reputational component because people now begin to question, okay, well, why do you keep getting called up by the National Assembly, et cetera, et cetera. So that should be paid attention to, and people should not just get carried away with just calling companies up because maybe some tax law was not 100% adhered to or something like that.
All right, and up next, governors of the 36 states of the Federation are seeking to take over fuel subsidy payments, according to ThisDay newspaper headline and the body of the story. They're saying let them take responsibility for subsidizing petroleum products consumed within their own territory. Cindy.
So if you look at this story on the honestly, I tell you, to deal with fuel subsidy issues in this country, it should be a course by itself, and it should be offered in international schools, Nigerians for fuel subsidy. On the merit of it, looking at it by itself, it makes sense.
Yeah,
Right?
let the
It
governments
makes
handle
sense.
their own.
Let them handle it because the inefficiency in the way it's handled by the NNPC today and the way it's apportioned across the states, and this idea and thought that all that lands in Lagos should sell at the same price as taken to the far corners of the country through the equalization fund and all that portion. It's all of that creates a lot of inefficiency that this proposal from the governor seems to make sense, right? That let's handle it ourselves. We would agree. Obviously, that means we'll have to agree prices within their own states. We therefore know that Lagos, even though it's closer, will pay the most because they feel we have the most. It would then make the system, in theory, more efficient. The problem, however, is because we still have it's still ultimately one pool, right? It's not a question of how much did you say was consumed in your state, and therefore how much your subsidy was, and what did you agree as subsidy versus what the other guy agreed as subsidy. And then we have this whole mess and infighting. First of all, we will never agree.
Would they use the funds judiciously?
They clearly won't use it. I mean, come on. Are they using other funds judiciously? This one will use judiciously. Come on, that's a given. What I'm focusing on here is whether all the governors would agree.
So people may think it's just deployed to get more funds from the government.
Exactly. Absolutely. So for me, it's us looking for ways to innovate in inefficiency. It's like, how do we do better while we're in the rut or in mud? There's no point. Can we just try and get ourselves out of it, rinse ourselves off, and take our dependence away from oil importations? That's what we should focus on instead of innovating in
Inefficiency.
All right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on. I think we've got one or two messages that may have come through. Do keep sending them in. Use the hashtag freshly pressed 981 up on Twitter. Cruz says Niger and nuclear energy in the same sentence. Are you sure that 2020s was not supposed to be 2080s? And who's shaking Ikoyi registry wedding table? Clearly he got our tweet. No, he got our tweet because we put up images of what the headlines are going to be, so you can follow along. And that leads us very nicely into our next story. Even though Agogo Sam comes back into comments saying same governors who haven't paid salaries that will handle subsidies. No.
So Guardian is next. Thanks for the cue, Folu. So this one says Nigeria targets first nuclear energy plants by mid-2020s. So this was addressed in Russia. It so happens that the President, Chairman, and Chief Executive of the Nigerian Atomic Energy Commission, Simon Pesco Malam, made a disclosure at the just concluded 2018 Atom Expo in Sochi, Russia. He said first, I like the fact that he rebutted the story that was carried in some dailies in October 2017, purporting a deal with Russia for the construction of 2 nuclear power plants. He said that was false. And he gave hopes. He said, first of all, he's not going to say he said categorically there was no contractual agreement that was signed with Russia or any country right now, but they are open to such possibilities. And they're saying that there's a hope to get a commercial plant running in to add 3 more in 5 to 10 years after they start in mid 2020.
Yeah, I'll say start that statement. 5 or 10 years down, you will find out that money was actually spent or something where money changed. We shall left money or lost money. Let's hope not. Okay, Nigerian nuclear energy. It's amusing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean I'm all for
Progress.
I'm all for progress. Right? But I mean we haven't sorted out technology that is over 100 years old. Just plain old
problematic.
Fossil fuel technology. We haven't sorted it out. It's not new tech. It's over 100 years old. We haven't gotten our act together. Right? It's with nuclear energy that has huge implications on the environment that we want to go. It's the same reason our carelessness and how we deal with safety and a bunch of other things is the same reason why we can't pipe gas into our homes. Do you understand?
Tunde, can I just try and just put a little monkey wrench in the wheel?
Right.
The same arguments were put forward in the 90s, late 90s with telecommunications.
Sure.
That we basically didn't have a working infrastructure when it came to telephone lines. That there was no way we could manage mobile technology and GSM.
Right.
But we did.
Yeah. So see,
So
my
I'm actually just being
totally
petty.
with you. Sure.
I'm just being petty
Yeah,
and annoying.
yeah.
So can the argument be put forward that with the right investment, just like you had with telecoms, et cetera, the right regulation, can this be possible?
No, so for me, it's not even. So all of the things come into play, right? But telecoms, the situation with telecoms was simply one of. It was more had to do
Regulation,
with
yeah.
regulation,
Right.
an unconducive environment, and some people just bottom line choosing to be elitist and corruption. Corruption was a driving force in keeping telecoms the way it was. There's a
Right.
stranglehold monopoly on it for a long time,
Yeah, it was.
and it was inefficient.
Here,
If we get it wrong,
There's going to be,
will
would
be
die.
at
People would
risk,
die, right? Okay,
right?
got
If we
it.
get it wrong, that's the issue, and it has to do with our attitudes
I understand.
and how we. If you cut corners in telecoms, no one's going to die.
Right.
You just can't make a call.
You cut corners in nuclear, you're going to have a Chernobyl.
You're going to have a Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And we can't deal with that.
No, we can't.
That's the
Because
issue.
that we're done when
Yeah,
that
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
Forget
That's-
it. We'll move to Ghana.
Absolutely. And they won't take us.
No.
Thank you very much.
Nigeria
for
must
this,
go.
but while the giants of Africa is still struggling to walk, Zambia has already taken steps. They've already signed a contract.
Absolutely. But now, okay, so good luck. Good on them. I hope
Yeah,
that
they're
they
far
have,
away from us.
they're far away from us. I hope they have, culturally they're better than us.
They're not that far.
They're very
I
far.
hope they have better attitudes, to be honest. But that's what we're looking for. Nuclear is the future.
Okay.
The question is, or what I've said, we haven't dealt with the past well enough. Yes, we've leapfrogged, like YJ said in telecoms, we leapfrogged all the, we leapfrogged years of technology to mobile. We can do the same energy. It's just that I don't trust that we will be careful enough with it. Then beyond that, then there's the political side to it when there will be arguments like, oh, are we doing just this for commerce? Or are we trying to, get to weapons?
People are trying to
Then we enter all that
Iranian.
Iran and, North Korea type territory.
Well, we've got a few messages coming through very quickly. Paul up on WhatsApp says government inefficiency, be it at federal or state level, will exist. Handing it to the governors just increases the process chain with a new interface with the state and the NNPC. Cruz just simply says nuclear Niger. Shimon says Nigeria and nuclear energy kit. Please, does anyone remember what happened with the satellites we launched again? That one wasn't even located in Nigeria. Still, it could not be maintained. I rest my case. Lots of people weighing in on the nuclear plants. Gbenga Kamu says nuclear plants, if there is a meltdown in call, we know who we are. I will relocate to. Nothing has changed though. And Big T says nuclear energy, we can't even maintain grass on a field in the national stadium. We can't run hydropower plants. We now want nuclear plants. I'm moving to Ghana. Solar is the only way to go, he says. Please, let's move on.
Now let's deal with the elephant in the room. On the Vanguard newspaper, we'll have this one. It says marriages conducted by Ikoyi registry, not legally binding.
No, they're not.
So they say, let's give you the details of the story.
Right,
Let's
so-
give you the details.
According to this story, so the Lagos High Court has ruled that marriages conducted by federal registry in Ikoyi is not legally binding, and this is on the heels of the fact that they say that it's unconstitutional for a federal government establishment to perform duties that's supposed to be meant for local governments. and its affairs. Nwaji, let's dig into this.
All right. I think for me, the main issue is with the heading of this particular article.
Yes.
Because I think that's where things get a little confusing.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be proper context
We need to see the full judgment.
to indicate what this judgment means. And I think, when you and I spoke about it earlier, the question was, does it now mean that marriages that happened prior to this judgment are now null and void? That's the actual question that needs to be answered.
Well, the
because I
judgment
know-
was passed on the 30th of April,
No, I know, that's my point.
2018.
That's fine. So
Yes.
does that now mean that if you got married on April 29th, 2018, that your marriage is null and void? That's what needs to be
We know
cleared
people
up.
who are planning who already paid for halls.
Okay.
In that same video.
Yeah, so that's the point. So now going into the actual judgment itself,
Yeah.
I kind of understand it with regards to jurisdiction of Lagos State versus federal, who has the authority, et cetera, to now ordain marriages from a license point of view. Because anywhere else you go in the world, it is the municipality that actually handles the issuing of licenses, depending on where you live, depending on where you're registered, if you pay tax, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand that in context. But I think it's also very important to also ask, why was the Ikoyi registry, which is a federal body,
Singled out?
not necessarily singled out, but
So
why did it
let me
exist
try
to
and-
begin with?
Let me
Yeah.
try and answer that for you.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I've been on this for 6 months, and not because I'm getting married, Lagos, because I was helping out a friend, and
Oh,
I
darn.
happened.
Speaking of
I
friend,
know, yes,
we
yes,
get-
yes, I know.
Disclaimer.
No,
Dang it, right?
no, still allergic.
All right,
Thank
all
you.
right.
Okay.
So I actually, just by coincidence, happened to be speaking to this chief registrar, and that's when he said to me, he explained to me, he said, look, first and foremost, constitutionally, like what you said, municipal, local government, they're the ones that have the right to issue. So apparently, federal government then came in, pushed themselves in. Ikoyi wasn't supposed to be the primary.
Yeah.
It was all about revenue collecting.
Okay.
And apparently, they tried to do this in other states in Nigeria. They
And it-
couldn't succeed.
Okay.
So they were able to succeed in Lagos, of course. I don't know, for whatever the reason.
So that's the history behind
That's
it.
the history behind it. And Lagos State have actually been in court. In fact, I think they tried to
Since
do it in Port
2004,
Harcourt.
yeah.
They've
Oh,
been
wow.
in court for so long trying to stop this. What everybody needs to know, because I did say to the guy, he needs to come on Smooth and talk to you guys,
Yes.
really explain it,
Yes.
because you'll explain it much better than I did. What everybody needs to know is that throughout, we've all been told that in order for you to get a visa or whatever, you need to show your registry from Ikoyi. It's always been false. And it was because I said, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to check this
Right,
with my
because if you
friend.
don't live in
That's how
Lagos,
I
then
found
what
out.
other
What
parts
do you
of
do
Lagos
then?
do
What
you
do you
It's
do?
not specific.
Just for
Marriage is
clarification
conducted there.
purposes. Sorry. go ahead.
Marriage is conducted there. They know about them.
This is
So
what
you
no,
can't get out.
no,
You're
no,
married.
no, no.
Can we
Big
just
fat Greek
clarify
married.
something very specifically with this story? Just to read out the only bit of the judgment that was actually put down in the newspaper, all right, is where he talks, the judge says very clearly that it is unconstitutional for the federal government to be carrying out
That's
weddings,
right.
and then goes on to put stopping them from carrying out further
weddings,
So
yes.
just for clarification's sake, because I don't want
It
people to
doesn't
walk away
revoke anything.
from
Okay,
That was
so
done
we can-
before.
because we don't know. That's the thing.
We
We,
don't
haven't
know,
seen the
it's-
full text.
exactly,
That's why I'm
that's
saying
what I
the
was
only way
asking,
we can
right.
say conclusively is once we see the full text of the judgment.
Yeah.
And of course, there's always appeal. People can appeal because this is a ruling of the High Court, the High
right,
Court
yeah.
of Lagos. So just pointing that out for
that's
clarification.
Actually,
reasons,
very
please.
quickly to clarify for you, this case actually they had already the federal government had already actually gotten a judgment some months before. They hadn't informed Lagos State. Lagos State then came back and counter whatever it is that you do legally. So it's really interesting.
So just very, very quickly, sorry, Valentine, on this point. Someone said to me yesterday when we were having this conversation on this actual
You're
topic that a lot of people also go to Ikoyi because of the prestige of it.
Yes.
It's on Kingsbury Road. It's
Ease of
quote
access.
unquote.
But it's actually
Prestige.
hideously looking and
It's hideously
dirty.
looking, but it's the
Dump.
nicest.
It's
It's
not-
one of the
Yes.
nicest looking ones. So
No,
people-
it isn't. Etiosa, you need to go there.
no, well,
Etiosa
okay.
is clean.
Okay,
It's by my house.
Let's
Okay.
move on. Let's move on. Nobody's got married today.
Thank you so much, guys.
Are we-
Well,
okay,
shout out
no.
to the people who thought they were getting married today. Oops, so sorry about
You're
that.
not divorced. You're still married if you got married in Ikoyi.
All right, okay, moving on very quickly to this day. Benue killings, Fulani group is protesting federal government's move to award or to give 10 billion naira grants, really, to farmers. So the Gan Allah Fulani Development Association of Nigeria, GAFDAN for short, has protested the gesture of the federal government towards rebuilding structures, settlements of farmers in Benue State, as announced by the Vice President when he visited Mr. Ireti Bakare-Yusuf.
Yes, yes. So very quickly, I mean, I think we're running out of time. So this is really interesting. So the federal government have said that, you know, they're going to help those affected, the residents of Benue State who have been affected by the Fulani herdsman attacks. Now, the Fulani group are saying, well, that's almost like a father taking the side of one child over the other. They actually say that they say society is at risk. This is a quote. Society is at risk when government only address a problem selectively and one-sidedly, thereby giving the impression that it is a father to only one family. The other neglected family may be hurt and decide to be uncooperative. That sounds a bit like a veiled threat, if you like. You can say, look, we feel marginalized, we feel you're taking somebody's side. I don't like the idea of using that word uncooperative.
No, that's
It
kind of saying the same
continues.
thing.
Well, he said we could be uncooperative. It continues. In the unfortunate situation, like the one we have in the Benue State, the government must be fair and just to all. Must be fair and just to all, so that there must be no victor and no vanquished, so that equity brings back love, peace, and tranquility. Totally agree with that. But I can't. You can't say the government shouldn't look after displaced people, and the Fulani people also say, well, just because we're not in those camps doesn't mean we haven't lost.
Been affected.
Yes,
They've lost
exactly,
household, they've
exactly.
lost livestock and all that.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Very quickly, a few messages up on Twitter. First Lady Awokwetu Martina says some single couples from the Ikoyi registry. You guys are so mean. Stop it.
I'm gonna love
Michael
it.
Tony says we have gas wasting and we're talking about nuclear. What is wrong with Nigeria? We've got more still coming in on WhatsApp. The messages are flooding in. Nedu says, and the fact is, people cut corners in telecoms every day, but like you said, people don't die.
Yeah, they don't.
Henry Manuel, meanwhile, says that the core of the governor's proposal is the under remittance into the federation account by the NNPC because a strange increase in daily fuel consumption.
So move
We've
the
seen
corporate- move the
disagreements
corruption around.
between the federal government and states in the last two FAC meetings. If the governors think that they can manage the under recovery better than the NNPC, then why not give them a chance? We've seen the internal capabilities of the NNPC. Somebody else says, Smooth FM, this table you are shaking. Almost all of us are on top of it. So who is now legally married? We all got used registry.
Tunde
I mean, I am.
Okufi,
I didn't get married there.
Vanguard Kamu says the reason why the Ikoyi registry is a draw because the embassy see marriages conducted there is credible
not
and
true.
valid.
That's
No,
we
that
are just
is true.
complicated
It's
here.
because
That's
of-
the implication.
that is the implication.
It
People
is
have been led to
implied.
believe that.
Olatu Bosu, meanwhile, says if in Nigeria we're to be a sane society, having sane leaders, most especially those in the legislative arm of government, these herdsmen and their sponsors would have been fished out and prosecuted, but the reverse is the case. They're only there serving their own selfish, distorted interests. Shame on the fourth world leaders, he says.
So we're taking the version of this story from Guardian. It says soldiers raid police station in search of killer cop. Something happened in Port Harcourt. So a soldier wearing mufti. Actually, let me just take the first line. So we'll take it from there. Irate soldiers yesterday invaded and ransacked a police station in Port Harcourt following the killing of their colleague by a policeman. And I would add, who mistook the military man in mufti to be an armed robber.
Right, okay.
Imagine.
So it's two parts of the story. One, first and foremost, rest in peace to the individual that lost his life in this very unfortunate incident. Condolences to his family and everyone else involved. But more importantly for me, the two parts here. One is this overzealousness of the police to react the way they react whenever they see anybody that they perceive to be a miscreant, as was indicated in this article, or an armed robber. That's problem number one. Problem number two for me is this attitude of the military of reacting the way they react in a democracy. When something like this happens, that they have the unmitigated right to just go to police stations and streets and shut it down. This is a backdrop of our military dictatorship legacy that we still haven't been able to shake ourselves away from. Is that anytime something like this happens, as unjust as it is, you have to let the system try its best to reconcile. If you don't do that, these things will continue. I appreciate the sentiment and the emotions behind it, but let us just all try our best to be calm, because these things only lead to further situations. More people could have died as a result of the soldiers storming the police station in search of justice. So this is why, for me, I always beg that we just try our best to be cool-headed when these things happen, no matter what emotions are running through, so that we don't get carried away and the situation doesn't get worse.
Thank you very much, Nwaji. And very quickly, we'll touch on this last story that trended yesterday. A soldier, SARS operative, tried to extort 5,000 naira from youths. A girl did a transaction that was recorded on the transfer.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the audacity of the policeman. They actually told them they didn't have any cash. They insisted she would put the money into their account, so she transferred it electronically at gunpoint.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so she transfers it to them. The guy even said, "I'll go and check my ATM." Can you believe this? But luckily, the good thing is, made them wait for it to clear. The good thing is that the police have now responded and said, we have arrested the policeman. His trial will commence soon. Any other person found culpable in the course of investigation will be made to face the law. The other good thing is that as soon as she posted this picture, lots of people said, "Oh, we know him.
That one.
He does that all the time."
Mm.
Thank God, it's time that he's taken off the streets, because we don't need people like him.
It's funny, he stayed with them because people have pulled fast ones before.
Yes.
They just transfer to themselves and show you they're like, bye.
Yeah. So, it's the fact that it just goes to show, when you are not afraid of even an electronic trace, then the rot is this. Yeah.
And we've come to the end of Freshly Pressed for this morning. I've got to end with this WhatsApp message from you guys who says, guys, why are we even discussing nuclear options in Nigeria? Are you people that wicked in that studio? What if workers now go on strike? Food for thought. Thank you very much, Miss Ireti Bakare-Yusuf, for coming in. Cecilia Lagos, find her up on Twitter. She got interesting articles as well. You may want to read them. Nwaji is up on Twitter as the corporate MC, always sharing some positivity. And Big Kuffs is just a big guy up on Twitter as well. So please do follow. Stay with us though, because we're going to be talking what's going on in the world of sports next. The delicious man called Gianluigi Buffon. He's leaving, but he looks so good while he's doing that. So I'll be telling you how I feel some more inside of the locker room. Stay with us. Just a delicious.
My